Taking your Oregon CDL? This is what you need. Like, subscribe, and let's hit it.
Question 1. The tractor protection valve prevents air loss from the trailer service line when the trailer is disconnected. True or false? False. The tractor protection valve prevents air loss from the tractor, not the trailer, by shutting off air supply in the event of line separation. Question 2. Hydraulic brake fade occurs when brake fluid becomes too hot, causing a loss of braking power. True or false? True. Overheated brake fluid can boil, leading to vapor in the system and resulting in brake fade. Question 3. Oregon requires all CDL holders to notify their employer of any traffic conviction within 10 days. True or false? True. CDL drivers must report both in and out-of-state convictions for traffic violations to their employer within 10 days. Question 4. When performing a pre-trip inspection, it is acceptable for the air brake system to lose up to 6 psi in 1 minute on a single vehicle. True or false? False. The maximum acceptable loss is 2 psi in 1 minute for single vehicles, 3 psi for combination vehicles. Question 5. The emergency air line controls the normal braking system of the trailer. True or false? False. The emergency line supplies air to the trailer's tanks and activates the trailer brakes if pressure is lost. It does not control normal braking. Question 6. In Oregon, a CDL is required to drive a vehicle designed to carry 16 or more passengers, including the driver. True or false? True. This includes school buses, church vans, and other large capacity vehicles. Question 7. When coupling a trailer, you should raise the landing gear before connecting the air and electrical lines. True or false? False. You connect the lines before raising the landing gear to ensure proper attachment and safety. Question 8. If your vehicle has dual air brake systems, you should drain both tanks separately each day. True or false? True. Each tank must be drained to prevent water accumulation and freezing in the lines. Question 9. The Oregon CDL Manual permits use of placards on passenger vehicles. True or false? False. Passenger vehicles must never display hazardous material placards, even if they carry such cargo. Question 10. You must stop within 15 to 50 feet of a railroad crossing if your vehicle is placarded. True or false? True. This federal rule applies to all placarded loads and is enforced in Oregon. Question 11. The minimum tread depth for tires on other wheels besides steering is 2/32 of an inch. True or false? True. Steering tires require 4/32, but all other tires must have at least 2/32 tread depth. Question 12. Oregon allows drivers to operate as CMV with a suspended regular license as long as their CDL remains valid. True or false? False. If your base license is suspended, you are not allowed to drive any commercial vehicle in Oregon. Question 13. A converter dolly used in triple trailer combinations requires its own braking system. True or false? True. Each converter dolly must be equipped with brakes that comply with state and federal safety standards. Question 14. When using ABS, you should pump the brakes to activate the system. True or false? False. ABS works best when firm, continuous pressure is applied. Pumping can reduce effectiveness. Question 15. During an in-cab inspection, the parking brake test must be performed on level ground with wheel chocks in place. True or false? True. This ensures the vehicle doesn't roll and accurately tests parking brake holding strength. Question 16. To avoid rollovers when driving tankers, you should brake early and take turns slowly. True or false? True. High center of gravity and surge make tankers particularly prone to rollover if turns are too fast or sudden. Question 17. You are permitted to refuel while your engine is running, as long as you are using diesel. True or false? False. Refueling with the engine running is prohibited for all fuels due to fire and explosion risk. Question 18. The Oregon CDL General Knowledge Test consists of 50 multiple-choice questions. True or false? True. Applicants must answer at least 40 correctly to pass with the required 80%. Question 19. You may use a handheld mobile phone while driving if you are at a complete stop at a red light. True or false? False. CDL drivers are restricted from using handheld devices at any time while operating a CMV, even when stopped in traffic. Question 20. When using a tire chain, Oregon law requires that chains must not damage the roadway surface. True or false? True. Chains are only legal when road conditions warrant and must not tear up asphalt or concrete. Question 21. In Oregon, a failed pre-trip inspection results in immediate disqualification from the skills test. True or false? True. If the vehicle is deemed unsafe, or if the applicant cannot demonstrate knowledge of required inspection items, the test is terminated. Question 22. You may legally block a fire hydrant if you are operating a commercial delivery vehicle. True or false? False. Oregon law does not exempt commercial vehicles from fire lane or hydrant violations under any circumstances. Question 23. A hazmat endorsement requires a background check by the Transportation Security Administration. True or false? True. All drivers applying for a hazmat endorsement must submit fingerprints and pass a TSA security threat assessment. Question 24. If your vehicle has a load-induced sag, it's acceptable to skip the air ride suspension inspection. True or false? False. Sagging can indicate suspension failure or overloading. Inspections must always include the suspension system regardless of load. Question 25. In Oregon, you must hold a commercial learner's permit for at least 14 days before taking the CDL skills test. True or false? True. This mandatory waiting period ensures applicants gain sufficient behind-the-wheel practice. Question 26. The presence of alcohol in the cab is legal as long as the seal on the container is unbroken. True or false? True. Federal and Oregon regulations permit transportation of unopened alcohol containers if stored away from the driver. Question 27. A double or triple trailer combination always requires a Class A CDL. True or false? False. While triples require Class A double trailer may be driven with a Class B CDL depending on weight and configuration. Question 28. School bus drivers in Oregon must submit to annual physical examinations. True or false? True. Annual medical certification is required to maintain a valid school bus endorsement in Oregon. Question 29. Combination vehicles are less likely to roll over than single vehicles due to added trailer weight. True or false? False. The additional pivot points and higher center of gravity make combinations more prone to rollovers, especially during sudden maneuvers. Question 30. In Oregon, a CMV driver must use low beams, not high beams, within 500 feet of oncoming traffic. True or false? True. This is a standard headlight regulation to reduce glare and ensure safety for all road users. Question 31. The pushrod stroke in an air brake chamber must be measured with the brakes applied. True or false? True. Pushrod stroke is checked during a brake application to determine if slack adjusters are within legal limits. Question 32. If your vehicle has ABS, you will not need to manually inspect brakes during your pre-trip. True or false? False. ABS is a supplemental system. Manual inspections of brake linings, slack adjusters, and air leaks are still required. Question 33. Hazardous materials must be labeled with the correct UN identification number. True or false? True. UN numbers identify hazardous substances and must be displayed on packaging and placards for compliance and safety. Question 34. Backing up is not tested on the Oregon CDL skills exam. True or false? False. Backing maneuvers are a critical part of the skills test and must be completed safely and accurately. Question 35. ACMV transporting liquid fertilizer in bulk must display a placard. True or false? False. Some fertilizers are exempt under limited quantity rules. Not all require placards unless they meet threshold quantities and classifications. Question 36. The Oregon CDL Manual allows turning right from the left lane if the turn is too tight. True or false? False. Wide right turns must be executed from the far right lane unless signed otherwise. Cutting into other lanes violates state traffic law. Question 37. Oregon requires tank vehicle endorsements for drivers hauling liquids in containers over 119 gallons. True or false? True. The tank endorsement applies when transporting bulk containers of 1,000 or more gallons aggregate or any single tank over 119 gallons. Question 38. It's safe to test service brakes while descending a steep grade. True or false? False. Brakes should be tested before descending. Brake fade can occur quickly on grades, so primary control is through proper gear selection. Question 39. You must retake the knowledge and skills tests if your Oregon CDL is expired more than 1 year. True or false? True. Oregon law requires full retesting after a 1-year lapse in CDL validity. Question 40. Placards must be displayed only when the vehicle is moving. True or false? False. Placards must remain visible on all 4 sides at all times, whether the vehicle is parked or in motion. Question 41. An improperly latched fifth wheel can cause trailer uncoupling during a tight turn. True or false? True. A partial latch may hold temporarily, but can fail under stress, especially during turns or uneven terrain. Question 42. Only hazardous materials drivers are required to pass a TSA background check. True or false? True. TSA screening is specific to hazmat endorsements and not required for other CDL classifications or endorsements. Question 43. In Oregon, there is no restriction on how many hours a CDL driver can operate in a day. True or false? False. Oregon enforces federal hours of service regulations that limit driving to 11 hours after 10 hours off duty. Question 44. A driver transporting hazardous materials must have emergency response information readily accessible. True or false? True. DOT and Oregon rules require emergency instructions to be within immediate reach of the driver while operating. Question 45. Brake lag is more noticeable with hydraulic brakes than with air brakes. True or false? False. Air brakes have longer lag time due to the delay in air pressure buildup compared to the instantaneous response of hydraulic systems. Question 46. Only CMVs over 26,001 pounds GVWR require a CDL. True or false? False. A CDL is also required for vehicles with lower GVWRs when transporting hazardous materials or 16 or more passengers. Question 47. It's acceptable to release the parking brakes before completing the air leak test. True or false? False. The air leak test must be conducted with the parking brakes released and full air pressure established beforehand. Question 48. If your CDL is suspended in Oregon, you may not operate a non-commercial vehicle either. True or false? True. A suspended CDL results in suspension of all driving privileges unless the base license is reinstated separately. Question 49. When parking facing uphill with a curb, Oregon law requires you to turn your wheels away from the curb. True or false? True. This prevents the vehicle from rolling into the street if the parking brake fails. Question 50. Triple trailers are legal throughout Oregon highways without restrictions. True or false? False. Triple trailer combinations are only allowed on designated routes and may be subject to seasonal or weather-related restrictions.
Done for now? Don't stop there. Grab your cheat sheet or keep grinding with the next video.